Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Welcome to the City of Mathematics. Melinda Krise created a place where anyone who considers themselves, say, math challenged, can find their way in her book, A Name of Their Own, the story of place value Mathematics City, Book 1. She was born and raised in Alaska, where she's also a teacher in Anchorage. So that's a major city up there, right?
It is. It's a major city. It's the biggest city in Alaska. Hundreds of thousands of people. Lots of the normal stores and other things that people are used to. Tons of restaurants and busy streets and highways and freeways and all that. So some people, the weather gets to it. We do have an interesting times of year when we have like daylight that's almost 24 hours a day. And then we have other times like now when the sun gets up around 10 o'clock and it sets around 4. So
Wow.
the only thing I don't like is when it gets really cold in January. Typically it'll get, below zero, and then there'll be a chill factor and stuff. And so, then it's pretty cold. I do not like ice, so that part gets me a bit in winter.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's great.
Yeah. Do you have a dog sled?
No, I don't. I do have 3 dogs, though. I have 2 Pembrokes and 1 Sheltie.
How long have you been writing?
Well, let's see. I think I've been writing since I was a kid. But I just recently decided to see about getting something published. The story that I had published, I'd actually been sharing with my class for over 20 years, and it had developed a little bit further from there. But I just finally decided, it was time to actually share it with people, aside from my regular class of kids.
How old are the kids that you're teaching?
The kids that I was teaching were in 2nd and 3rd grade. So I've taught as young as kindergarten. But it was basically whenever they would come up against the topic of place value in their math curriculum, that I would share this with them because they would have a lot of trouble understanding the concept, and this would really help. And it was something that my math methods teacher in college had introduced me to the concept, and it just kind of spun from there. So the kids loved it. I thought, why not share it with other people?
Is this a series?
It will hopefully be a series. There's another book that has actually already been written. That story is Mathematics City Book 2, and it's actually the story of rounding and rounding numbers, because that's another one that kids have trouble with. So there is a book 2, and then there's a book 3 that's partway written. So it is part of a series.
Okay, so why is place value so difficult for kids?
Well, they have trouble understanding it, and it's like anything else. Kids like to know why. And so, in that respect, it's hard to tell them, why is this called thousands? Why do we say the word hundred when we're reading the number? Why is this millions or billions? Or how is this bigger than the other, and why did it get a different name? I mean, this is still a 5, but we're putting it in a different spot, and so it's worth something different. And it's called something different. And so understanding all those concepts and why it is actually important. At the same time, because it just naturally goes along with it, I've included some social emotional learning in the book. And so there is a thread of gossip and how gossip can hurt and happen. And, when somebody has the same name as somebody else, you don't really know who the person's talking about. And so in the case of the numbers, if they're all called 5 or they're all called 1 and you don't know what their value is, it can cause a real problem.
Just like people.
Yes.
I just think it's so creative that you've made this into a little town. It's like you live here and there's a street, the numeration factory and, welcome to the City of Mathematics. I think that's so interesting. Could you describe that?
It is like a little town. The numbers all live on a street, and the street's filled with houses. The houses all have identical doors and windows and mailboxes, and flower beds and things like that, the numbers themselves have humanistic characteristics. So they are like real people as far as the way they function and act. Now, there are some people in Mathematics City as well, but they're mostly, most of the characters are numbers. And that's what it's geared towards. And, because everybody lives in houses that are exactly the same except for their size increases and everything, it's hard to know whose house is whose and things like that. The same way with mailboxes and things. And so they have to figure out how to problem solve and how to fix these things that would cause problems otherwise and everything. Things that we're used to because our houses have numbers on them already, and they might even have a person's name on the mailbox and things like that. But in this city, that hasn't happened yet. And everything. And they have a factory that they work at. There's parks, there's playgrounds, there's different types of apartment buildings and different things like that. Because it is really like its own individual land and everything. But the numbers are, they're the characters. They have arms and legs. They have eyes. They have facial expressions, and they are busy working and doing a job. And anybody that does much with math knows that those numbers are things that we work with, and they are, actively helping us to solve problems. Well, in this case, they are just, very, very humanistic characteristics. They've got those human qualities added to them to make them come alive in a fantasy that kids can relate to and everything, but also give them a very clear understanding, hopefully, of why place value is important and how to remember it when you're saying it or reading it or things like that, so that it makes it a lot easier for them to actually read numbers and understand it and recognize the difference between the sizes and things like that.
I love looking at, the little 6 and the little 4, and it looks like you did a YouTube video.
Yes.
Is Mr. Infinity the guy who looks like the Thomas the Tank Engine guy?
Okay. Yes, that's Mr. Infinity. He kind of reminds me of the Colonel from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
There you go.
Yes, I wasn't thinking about Thomas the Tank Engine at all, but he's exactly the way I pictured him in my imagination. And he's the one that is in charge of the factory. And if you think about it, the reason why he has his name is because numbers go on and on and on for infinity. So that's where his name came from. And everything. And he's Mr. Infinity, and he's in charge of all the numbers of the factory and all the different departments, which is a lot of responsibility. So when there's problems, oh my goodness, it can give you a headache because he has to deal with all of them.
I wish I had this when I was a kid. I mean, you just said the word math and I there was a block in my brain. But if I had like these cute little numbers to look at, I might have had a chance, Mm-hmm. It's very logical.
Yes, and this allows you to make connections. You get to make those connections that will help to draw it into your mind and make a reference to it so that it'll be easier and everything. And actually make math be fun because, math is fun for some people all the time, but a lot of people it's not. And a lot of people it is a struggle for and something, that they're just like, I don't get this. I don't get this. Well, this is to hopefully help them to get it.
Yeah.
To understand it. And in that regards, I've also had feedback from some parents as well as some teachers that said, we love the book and we'd love to have something to use with our kids afterwards so that they could, read the story and then turn around and be able to do something with their students with it. And so on that regard, there's a workbook that goes with the book that was created specifically for it. And is available out there on Teacher Pay Teacher for just a little bit because it's not designed to be expensive. It's designed to help them with the book. But the kids actually get to design their own math characters on the pages as well as doing different problems and games and activities that go along with what the book talks about. And build your own little math characters so they can make a cute little 6 and a little 4 and all that are on every page so that if there's those kids that they get done fast and they get done early, they can, color their little characters, add the expressions, the faces that they want and design them and make them their own and help to keep the book alive for them.
This is great. Now, yeah, every time I talk to a teacher who comes up with a creative idea and, writes a book, and there's so many creative teachers out there. I mean, that's why they say it's a calling, because you truly have to love what you do to come up with some of this stuff. I just wish there was a big bin that all of these great ideas could go into, where every teacher in the world could go to this bin and say, okay, how can I make math easier? Here's a program, from Alaska. And you would think through education that it would be easy for teachers to get ideas like this out there, but it's not, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not. They have to know really where to look and what to look for and hope, because, you could search forever and not find things. One of the places that people go a lot are Teacher Pay Teacher, or on Amazon. They can search out on a topic. They can search out on the wide web looking for things, and they'll get some good ideas, hopefully. But there's a lot of stuff that isn't, worth spending your time on. You really have to look creatively for things. And I haven't found anything like what I wrote out there. I haven't. And I really felt like it should be shared with the world, because there's just so many people that are struggling with so many areas, and to make it fun is something that needs to happen more in education, especially because in this day and age, we have so many kids that have been through trauma, and it could be trauma because there was an earthquake. It could be because mom and dad are divorced. It could be because of any number of things that people don't even necessarily look at as trauma and think of it that way, but it shuts them down when it comes to their education, and it can cause them to, under any kind of stress, not be able to function the way they normally would. So when they're presented with this math topic that starts to feel stressful, because their brain just stops working. It stops engaging. It starts blanking out. And so the more we can make it so that it's understandable and it's fun and it's relaxed, the better chance there is to reach everyone. And for all those kids to be able to function and to keep going. These are the kids that sometimes, if they think they might be in trouble, or they think that they're being called on for something that they don't know, they can't even talk. And it's not that they don't want to. It's that they've been through some stuff and it's affecting them right then. Right. And so, making it fun is super important. And, everything in life that we're doing can't necessarily be fun, but this can. Right. And so if we have those opportunities, we need to take them.
How do you get this out of Alaska?
Social media. There are also, different book fairs and distributors, but getting the word out is important. And sharing it with other people is really important. Having people actually read the book and give feedback is huge. It's one of those things, the more people will share and talk about things, the better. If I tell one person and they tell two people, and those two people tell two more people, and pretty soon it's 4 people telling 2 people each, and that becomes 8, and it builds momentum. And there are different teacher conferences and things like that do happen, but they're not typically on, creative ideas like this. There might be a little resource library and things, but most of the time it's like textbook material that would be being offered there, not children's books. These kind of things, it's found out by word of mouth or because it's being published out somewhere.
Right. So are you doing anything on your own to get it out there?
Well, we have social media accounts that just actually started up, as well as a YouTube channel. I have an author's page on Facebook, as well as on Instagram. There's a Pinterest thing that's coming out. The Teacher Pay Teacher advertises the book there as well. But just different ways to try to notify and let people know that it exists and that it is being talked about.
Melinda, great idea. I'm looking forward to the next book.
Thank you.
This is great stuff. Coming from somebody like I can't even balance a checkbook. I mean, it's bad.
I understand. I'm always thrilled when it balances.
This was great. I really enjoyed talking to you. I want to come to Alaska.
You should. You really should. But not right now because it's really cold.
A.L. Morgan helps out at her grandmother's company in Wisconsin. And when she gets some spare time, she's reading and watching movies. She's only been writing for a couple of years, and already she's published her first book, Remembrance of Vida. So what made you start writing?
I I had a very big imagination as a kid, and I always daydreamed. In fact, I missed a lot of lessons because of it. But as I got older, I the idea of writing popped into my head, but it was always like one of those goals that was far away, and it was like a bigger risk to take and everything. So I never really put too much thought into it up until like 2 or 3 years ago when I really wanted to write, and it was really bugging me because I was reading all these great stories, and I was like, well, I want to do one. So we actually, at the job I worked at the time, they had a speaker come in, and it was more work related, but he said something that kind of stuck with me. And he basically just said, have the courage to be imperfect. And I realized no author is perfect. I find plot holes and mistakes in some of my favorite authors, and they're still just as great. So I kind of just took the risk and finally did it because I accepted the fact that it wasn't going to be perfect my first time or any time after that.
What kind of books, what author do you like to read?
I love Sarah J. Maas. I absolutely adore her writing. And then I've been looking in, not necessarily, I haven't actually been able to do a lot of reading lately, but when I do, I try going more towards like mystery or fantasy with some like light aspects of horror. I love that stuff, and that's what I put in my books. But besides Sarah J. Maas, I think one of my other more bigger authors that I read is Julie Kagawa. She's a bit of an older author. I don't see her stuff out as much anymore, but I still love her writing and her stories.
And you find holes in their plots sometimes.
Not necessarily too much in those series, but I mean Harry Potter. There's been
Harry
yeah,
Potter.
there's been so many plot holes that have been pointed out to me over the years, and I'm like, wow, there really are a lot of plot holes.
Like what?
I'm trying to think.
I read all of those books because my kids were reading them, and I was like, I got to know what they're reading, so I'm going to read it too.
Yeah, right.
Did anything in particular inspire your book?
I think it was just mainly my imagination and the stories that I would like subconsciously just kind of go through in my head. But a lot of the inspiration came from my favorite authors. Like Sarah J. Maas, I love her writing style, and obviously I don't try mimicking it or anything, but she's very straight to the point. She doesn't drone on or anything, and I just love her stories. And I've always loved fantasy more than anything. So I think I really wanted to create my own world that I could escape into or like that other people could escape into, like my favorite authors did for me.
So tell me about your book.
So it's definitely fantasy. I try keeping it a little bit of a darker fantasy and then with some of those light aspects of horror. But basically, my main character, she's a younger girl and she was found in the forest with no memories of her life, and an old couple takes her in, and she kind of lives in this impoverished town for a while, and not many people come there. But one night, a strange man comes there, has a strange conversation with her, and ends up kidnapping her later and bringing her to a completely different realm. And suddenly, exists, and there's all kinds of creatures. So it's kind of her navigating her way through all of this with no memories of her past and seeing who she can trust and trying to regain those memories and kind of rediscover the world she was originally from.
She's just lost throughout this entire book, looking for answers,
Oh yeah.
like walking through the dark, no lights, no.
Yeah, yeah. And she is thrusted into different places all the time, and she's just like a piece that they're moving around all the time, and she's really trying to figure out where she actually belongs and who she can trust, because obviously a lot of people from that realm are telling her things, but she's not sure what she can actually believe.
So she's in one realm, and then there's people in another realm.
Yeah, so I kind of built it where she came from, like the mortal realm where we would be, and then I kind of put her into this like fairy realm. So not like little pixie fairies, but like if you think elves of Lord of the Rings, like those kind of fairies. They're really powerful, like beautiful creatures. And she's kind of put into that world, and she's told that she's a part of it, but she obviously doesn't know who to believe or who to trust. So it's kind of her discovering all these creatures and people on her own.
Well, you say that creatures commit vile deeds. Like, what's going
Yeah.
on around her?
So there was actually a little snippet. You get to see a little snippet of the village that I originally put her in. And there's a portion where they talk about a little kid going missing, and then there's like brief mentions of kids going missing, like human children. So I'm kind of putting in there that the creatures have to do with the kids going missing, and kids are dying, and the creatures that some of them I created, and some are from folklore. I mean, I try making them as scary as possible. So they eat kids and they do creepy things.
Oh. And you say that realms rage on the brink of war. This is in your book description.
Yes, when she comes back into that realm and she's discovering it, there's also talk of an uprising, and the realms are kind of unsettled, and there's kind of a threat of war, and they don't know where it's coming from or who's causing it.
Are the people responsible for her losing her memory possibly the ones who took her?
That's kind of one of the main plots. So you figure it out as you read.
Yeah. This weird guy kind of knows where to find her in this place that not many people know about. So that would make sense. Oh, and she doesn't know who to trust, whether this guy who came back to find her or the people that she's meeting. And, did she do something horrible that she doesn't remember doing? That's my question.
I'm still actually deciding on that. So, in the first book, she's kind of journeying towards what took her memories or what happened. And then eventually she will get all her memories back, and they're going to come back to her one by one. And that's more towards like the second book, that she'll be getting those back fully. So I'm actually still deciding what all I want to throw in there. I know like my main plots and everything that are already in there, but I'm still debating throwing some more in.
Does the elderly couple, are they trustworthy? Were their intentions sincere?
Oh yeah, no, those are actually two of my mom's favorite characters. Oh. They're just very sweet.
They're just
people.
Good people. Oh, good.
Yeah.
So this is a trilogy.
Yeah. Yep. Eventually. Yep.
And you're just taking it one step at a time.
I am. It took me a little less than a year to write this first one, so I'm hoping to publish my second one sometime next year.
Now, how are you building an audience?
I have like a Facebook group people can join, and I post a lot of my book updates there. I'm hoping to do more book signings, or not more, I haven't done any yet, but I'm hoping to do a book signing soon. I have a lot of people that I know distantly and close that all want their copy signed, so I'm gonna have to figure that out soon. But other than that, it's just a lot of posting on Facebook and then marketing where I can.
Is that generating any interest, the posting on Facebook?
So I actually started posting in the group before the book was actually published to get people, geared up for it and get people in the group. It's not a large following. A lot of it is like friends and family or friends of friends, and some people are in there I don't know, but they kind of just follow along. And then when the book was published, they all went and got their copies. So it worked well in terms of the first publishing.
That's great. So that does work.
Yeah.
That's good. No, that's good for people to know, because I try to talk to people about that. And, a lot of times, people, that's where they get stuck. It's like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
No,
it's crazy. I thought I was the only one, but I have listened to so many podcasts, and authors are saying the hardest part about publishing a book wasn't writing the book, it was marketing it and getting it out there and gaining attraction.
Yeah. Unless it has a specific, like I interviewed a woman who wrote a book about a dog. So she goes to kennels and veterinarian offices, right? So she's got a little niche there.
Yeah.
But a book like this is just, it's hard.
It is.
You're looking for that audience. But if you are getting some traction on Facebook, that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
If there is a bookstore near you or a library where you can gather a group together and talk about it, that's good.
Right.
Book clubs. A lot of people are talking to me about book clubs.
Yeah, I have seen a lot. I was just looking the other day at literary events that I could go to talk with other authors, and there's a lot of book clubs out there.
There are a lot of book clubs out there, and people don't realize, there's one in that local church that you pass every day. There's a group of
Yep.
ladies or ladies and men that get together, and if they know there's a local author, that's exciting to them,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
especially on Facebook too. It's a great way to really gain more of a group, but I'm part of a lot of like groups for books that I've read or series. And they're great. I mean, they post memes in there all day related to the books. They post recommendations. It's really great to be a part of.
How about Goodreads? I've heard a lot about that too.
Yeah, I think it's good too. They have a lot of options on their site that I've seen so far. I think it's a good source as well
All right.
to gain more books.
All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Let's go across the pond where we find David Clark, who has accomplished a lifelong dream. He's published The Connection, the first in a series of 4 books. And we are talking to you on Zoom, David. What do you do there in the UK?
Write books, basically, and take the dog for a walk. That's it.
That's amazing. Do you get paid to walk the dog?
I wish I did.
So what did you do before you started writing?
Well, work-wise,
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, trainer, and assessor in the oil and gas industry. I did retire, but I'm looking for work again because I think I'll get a bit bored just with walking the dog. So I always wanted to write, and I finally decided to do it after I had the stroke and I was on my deathbed, and decided that the book that I wrote was in 10 years in the making, and I'd taken lots of notes of where I used to work. But I used to keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off because I didn't know how to start the book. So then I had the stroke, and then when I was laying on my bed on the deathbed, I just thought, I've got to write this book because I could be dead tomorrow. Life has no boundaries. So as soon as I got back to a living person, that's when I started writing the book.
So what inspired your character? Your character reminds me of Jack Ryan.
All right, yeah. I suppose he's like, to me, he's like somebody I wanted to be. You know what I mean? He's like a bit of a hero type, and he's indestructible, and he does things for the right people, for the good people, against the bad people, which that's me all over. I like to be good rather than be bad.
In terms of the plot and the characters, did anything in your real life inspire that?
Yes, I met lots of them characters that I've met are in that book, believe it or not, under different names, but they have the same traits as the people that I've met, the bad ones. I've met some good ones, and they're in the book as well.
So you meet bad people in the oil and gas industry.
Believe it or not, yes. I've met some really nasty people, and I've met extremists and all sorts from different countries, because you meet people from different countries, and they have some really terrible views.
So tell me what your book is about.
Well, basically, we tell the story of James, who he is, where he's from, what he's done in his life. He used to be a street fighter, and because in this town there's nothing else to do, you either go to school, you can be educated in, super educated and move on in life, or you can be a fighter, and that's what he did. Although he was educated, he got to a point where people were betting on him, and he just felt, oh, this is not for me anymore, because he got beaten one fight, and he decided this is, the pain and everything that was getting into him. He wanted to move on. So he spoke to his father, and he said to him, because his father was an ex-services, so his father advised him to go in the army. So he went in the army, and he discovered that the army was for him. Because everything that he did in the army, he was the champion of. Whatever he did, shooting, he went into boxing, he became disciplined, and that discipline helped him focus on what he was going to do. And from the army, because he was so good at being in the army, he got selected for the SAS. And then he was part of a four-man operations team who used to go on missions around the world looking for drug cartels, terrorists, and so on.
What is the SAS?
Now the special services, like in the army, like Delta Force. Yeah.
Like a Navy SEAL.
Yes, yeah. So then, because he was in that zone, that tunnel where he was comfortable, but obviously he was getting to an end of his career, because you get to a certain age in the army, you've got to move on. Because they're the only one, young people. So when he got to around about 40, he had to move on. And that's when he decided to, again, nothing left in his life. He wanted to become a private investigator. So he set up his own business, which wasn't very well planned. That's when he got his first case. And from that case, it spawned the fact that he had to go to Singapore, Indonesia, and he met somebody in Singapore from his past life in the army, in the SAS, Gus, who was another character. And then when he went to Singapore, that's when when he went to Indonesia, this is when he finds the case that he's on. He's looking for this wife of the husband that he took the case on. But in the meantime, he gets employed by MI6 because the case that he's on, the woman that they're looking for, Kathy, she's mixed up in this drugs cartel. So the MI6 want him to work for them over in Indonesia, but he refuses. But he because they offered him lots of money, he says yes. And then when he's over in Indonesia, because he's mixed up in this case, he goes to an area where it's been cased by the CIA. So the CIA recognizes James from many of the missions that they were involved in. So they meet up with him, and then he meets the deputy CIA director, Thelma Page, and she offers him a role for her. So now he's employed by two major, shall we say, police forces, and he's also looking for this girl that's lost.
Wow.
So because what he's involved in, these guys that are involved in this case are all drug barons, and it spawns even bigger because they're not just drug barons. This is going to the next books. So this is a side issue with the with this MI6 and the CIA. He's basically looking for this missing wife, so he needs to find her for the the husband, because he's devastated. So eventually, yes, I don't want to spoil the book, but yes, he finds her. Well, like he said to the guy, whether she's dead or alive, he's going to let her know.
And so the next book is a new case. Like, does he do a new case every book?
It's part of this marries with the first book. The people that these villains that they meet are all part of this barbed chain, and it goes from one end of the world to the other, from America to Colombia to Indonesia to as I've wrote about, it's happening in Gaza now. It all goes to there as well. It all involves them people. So, by the way, I'm not jumping on that. I started the book before that started, the Gaza and Israel. So
now, how are you generating interest for this book?
What I was doing was just photographing the book and then put it onto a reel and saying, this book is available soon on Amazon. So, but now these other people have got involved. They've put a lot more posts on, and they're telling the story of me. They're telling the story of they even put extracts of the book on, and they're showing where the YouTube channel is and everything. So
I would think excerpts from this book would be really interesting. And another thing that would be interesting is background on these characters, how they grew up, what their parents were like, where they were from. How did they become like these villains, right? Were they ever good people? Did they become bad people? How did that, there's like all kinds of things you could talk about.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. I could do that. I could have a page and do that, but I don't know how to make that public to people. But I'm not social media savvy at all. I'll plan to do a book signing, but I can arrange that with I'm a part of this holiday group, and I've already arranged with them that once the book starts to sell, I will go there, and they've said yes, you can do it. You can do a book sign and everything. So that's in the middle of England, so I would get lots of people there.
Okay, that would be good. Have you been to all of the places that you talk about?
Yes. Some of them are characters I experienced while I was there, in Singapore. Yeah. I mean, Christy's one of the main characters. I actually met a Christy while I was in Singapore. It sounds a bit, but I was walking back to my hotel because I was on a visa run from Indonesia. And I've been for a meal, and I was walking back to the hotel. And there was this girl, obviously she was a lady of the night, and she was just a picture of absolute beautiful. And she just walked towards me, and the things that she said in the book, that's what she said to me.
I want to read the book just to find out what she said to you. Listen, it was very nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
And you, yeah, thank you very much.
Lori Crabb has a pretty high-pressure job as a sales and marketing executive, but somehow she finds the time to write and publish books. This one is entitled Dog Camp Through the Eyes of Betsy. When did you start writing? When did you find the time to start writing?
I'm honestly, I'm not a writer. I've always had in my world little Maltese dogs and their little toys. And I've always had a woman that I would get my girls from when one would die or whatever. And I'd known this woman for absolutely ever. And she called me one day, and I had 3 of her girls already, but she called me and she said, I would like you to have this little girl. And I said, okay. And we called her Grandma Barb. She was on the Maltese Association, the National Maltese Association, and so extremely reputable woman. So, but she says, you can't have her right away because she just had a baby and she lost their little puppy. So I said, well, just call me when, I can pick her up. So she called me and she goes, this little girl's ready to come to your home. And I named her Betsy. And Betsy, in her personality, wrote the book. I started jotting down notes on dog camp years ago about how I felt when our pooches had to go to a kennel or to the veterinarian while we were gone, and how children must feel, because I was kind of feeling the same way. Are they going to be okay? And I'd call and I said, is everything okay? Are they all right? That kind of thing. So Betsy, really, I said to a friend of ours, I said, well, I've got this, started jotting down, and they said, finish it. And so I thought, well, what do I have to lose? So Betsy started writing, and I watched her little annex and how I would feel if Betsy had to go to dog camp. And it's for children that parents travel, for work or whatever. Maybe their own little fur creatures have to go to dog camp, and how these children sometimes can feel anxiety. And then it's like Betsy says, it's not really that bad. Don't tell anybody, because I really do have fun. So I wanted children to realize that it's not all bad, that their pooches probably do have fun. So then I found a publisher, I had no idea how to do any of it. And my personality is just move forward, show up and do it, or figure it out. And so found this publisher, Fulton Books, and they took it. And I had 3 publishers in Europe, and then 3 in the States. And I didn't, I'm not linguistic person. So I thought, well, I better start in the United States. So that's how Betsy kind of evolved.
So how do you lay out the book? What are some of her antics?
The story goes, that I'm hearing dog camp, and then they're making a phone call, and Betsy's watching, that's like, oh my gosh, they're making a phone call. And then they start talking about, oh, Betsy, you're going to dog camp, and then the little children of the family, then luggage comes out. And it's like, oh my gosh, what about the puppy dog? Betsy says, what about my luggage? And then it's like, oh, now the day is coming where I'm going in my car with my other sisters, and I'm going to dog camp, and the children are holding her and saying, oh, we're going to miss you. And Betsy's saying, now don't get too excited, because I'm going to have fun. And then she gets to dog camp. She has her own handler, her own personal attendant, and she gets to spa. She gets to play, and it's like I'm just having a good time. And my sleeping quarters aren't the same, because I like to sleep on my family's beds, but it's okay, because my family's sleeping quarters aren't the same either, I'll bet, on their vacation or whatever, right? And then one day she gets this beautiful shower, and they dress her all up, and guess what? My family's home, and I get to go home. And it's for children that just, maybe have anxieties about, oh my gosh, I just feel bad that my dog has to go to dog camp, and we're not going to see her for a while, and is she going to be okay? And on and on.
Do you get to read it to little kids?
Yes, I do. And then I have it at animal rescue leagues and those kinds of things. And they just, these little children, their eyes just light up because I happened to find an illustrator, and it just, everything fell into place for these books. My illustrator, I asked an individual, I go, I'm writing a book, but I got to find an illustrator. And this individual said, I know one. And so this was her first book, but she just nailed it because she was not close to me. And I sent her pictures of the girls, and she really made the book come to life.
Oh, so the hardest thing about a children's book is getting to children, right? Unless you have kids in school.
Right.
So how did you manage that?
Basically went to libraries, and then went to dog kennels, or, the kennels. I have good relationships with veterinarians and those types of things. But libraries, when they have bookstores that have storytelling, those kinds of things. And I would just go in and say, hey, here's this book. And the Rescue League even has storytelling for children at some of their events.
That's great.
I know. So that's
so smart.
It just all fell into place, really.
But all your books are not dog books.
Yeah, my second one is about Betsy, and her LLC is Heavens to Betsy Books. And then
Betsy has her own LLC.
She does.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And she has her own nanny. Which comes, so if I travel, and sometimes, some organizations say, can Betsy come? And it's like, absolutely, Betsy can come. So then I have veterinarian tech that will watch her. But yeah, she's like this little 4.5, 5 pound little full blown treasure.
A lot of people find the most difficult part is doing what you did, walking into places where it would make sense for their book to be, mm-hmm. and saying, hey, I wrote this book, and, could you put it on where your people wait to go in and see whatever? Mm-hmm. The thing is your book definitely has a niche.
It does. And it has a purpose, finding my forever mom. And it's about Betsy, and her grandma Barb calling and kind of rescuing her, I think. And calling her and getting her to the place where, Betsy will, just totally thrive. And that is for children, that are in transition, foster care, and these types of things. And they're so lost. Well, Betsy was lost, and it's okay, but don't ever give up. And that's what that book is about. Because I think so many times, adults have that same fear, or I've heard people pick up their puppy dog or cat or whatever the creature may be from a kennel, or, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't think they really had fun, and it's a worry, I think. And children, don't understand, and especially when a parent travels, well, dad's going to be gone. Oh my gosh, well, is he ever coming back?
Yeah. Yeah. So how many Betsy books do we have?
I have 2 at the moment that are published. And then my illustrator just got me illustrations for Snacking the Betsy Way.
Oh, no.
Betsy will get up at 2:00 every morning. She wakes us up, and she'll go and she'll piddle and she snacks. So it's about not having to sit down and eat a full meal. Clean your plate. What is that? And so there are so many children that will just snack, or adults will snack. Well, Betsy snacks, and she's going to get the same nutrients, but she doesn't want to sit down because we're all too busy, and Betsy's busy. And she's, I don't have time. I got things going on, so I got to just grab.
What's Betsy doing? What's she busy doing?
Oh, playing or overseeing, looking out the windows, or maybe she's traveling. Doing all kinds of little puppy dog things.
This is great. Lori, it sounds like so much fun.
It is fun. I'm having fun with it.
Are you just taking it one book at a time, or do you have a plan, or?
I never hardly plan. I did my first book, and I was so excited. I'd already started my Forever Mom because that woman, Barb, is just endearing. And then the snacking, I've just submitted it to the publisher actually yesterday just to see if they'll take it, which I think they will. And the illustrations just are the preliminary sketches. So, yeah, and I think, I want Betsy to really get well known. But it's really hard to get her out in the whole world.
Yeah.
You got to take little bits and pieces of it.
One step at a time. Next thing you know, Betsy will be in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. She'll be a balloon.
Well, that's
like Elf on the Shelf.
That is absolutely crazy, because I said to her when I started doing her first book, I go, you need to be in Macy's parade. And then when the parade was going on, I go, Betsy, you didn't make it this year. We got to keep working harder.
Was she okay with that? She was good?
Yeah, she was.
You could do a stuffed Betsy that comes with the book. I don't know.
Well, and then I was thinking about a coloring book.
Coloring Betsy?
Now the coloring books, yeah. But the coloring books now are so, on their laptops and things. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, you got some great ideas, Lori. You're cracking me up.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a surprise in writing books because I never thought I was that person. But it just happened.
Well, Lori, if you can do it, so can somebody out there who's listening right now going, I don't know. Well, maybe I could,
Yeah. Well, and you never know. I mean, my answer is unless you try something, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then move on.
Right.
But.
Well, thank you so much. You're quite the inspiration, Lori Crabb.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much.
You have a great day.
Hey, thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Elysian Wordsmith. Not a bad pen name for a young guy who is going all in with his first published book entitled The Quest of the Seven Blades, Book 1, The Great Tree Labyrinth, The Prophecy Series. How long have you been writing?
I've been writing for about, I think, 6 or 7 years.
So how old were you when you started?
I think about 16.
What made you start?
Honestly, it kind of just started as something to do in the free time during study hall. It was just a rough draft of basically what I have published right now.
Oh, you started writing this when you were 16?
Yeah. I just really liked fantasy, something fiction, something I could just easily make up and pass the time, I guess. And then it just sort of bloomed.
So how many books are in this series?
Oh, right now I have... There's about 10.
10 books already?
Yeah, I do mostly self-publishing, but the Great Trees Labyrinth is the first one I've actually gone through at a real publisher.
All right, so you're going to start all over again with the publishing, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Did something happen in your life, or did this just come to you out of nowhere, or what? How did you come up with this?
Usually it just kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, I just sit down at the computer and I just get to writing, and sometimes I go back through and edit some things out, but most of the time it's just whatever pops into my head.
All right, so a talking rock popped into your head.
Yeah.
And it burned into his hand. That's your main character?
Yeah, that's Cal.
Is that you?
I mean, I based, I guess, some things off of sort of my own personality.
All right.
And how I would react, I suppose.
So the book opens with a talking rock burning into Cal's hand.
Yeah, he ends up finding one of the legendary 7 blades, and the rock starts talking to him, telling him that he has to sort of go on this quest to find the other ones and the paladins that wield them, just so they can save their country.
The country is Arcadia?
Yes.
All right. And the quest of the 7 blades involves an ancient sword that craves blood.
Yeah.
All right. What does that mean?
Well, he starts to kind of tap into its own power, into the blade's power. It kind of has a different effect on him. And it keeps pushing him to kind of dig into his own, sort of, you could say, his own sin of wrath, his anger. Because he's basically alone in the world that he's grown up in. He doesn't have anyone besides maybe a single friend, and he just has a lot of built-up rage, and it just sort of amplifies it.
What happened to his family? Do we know?
That's something that the book sort of starts to uncover. But as far as he's aware, his mother just left him at an orphanage, and that's it.
And his only friend is Amelia?
Correct.
How do they meet?
They sort of just grew up in the same town, and she kind of just befriended him. They would both go out and train into the woods. She would use her bow and arrow, and he would use kind of practice with a wooden sword.
What kind of town do they live in?
It's a very small. It's basically a medieval town. A lot of just wooden houses, not even brick buildings, except for the main castle.
And what is this great tree?
The Great Tree is a massive, just magically enchanted tree that kind of resides over like a couple 100 miles. Like the branches are widespread, and it's not even around his main town, but eventually he has to kind of move that way once things get too complicated back at his main home.
What makes it complicated? What's the conflict in your story?
Well, once he grabs hold of the blade, it kind of puts out this sort of signal to a whole bunch of creatures, bounty hunters, anyone that's willing to try and get this power, and it kind of brings it towards him, and eventually gets Amelia's own father in a bad position where they have to go and try and save him from the own knights that are trying to protect their town. And once they sort of save him, they are chased out of the town and have to try and go into hiding.
And who are the paladins?
The paladins haven't been fully introduced. They get introduced more or less one at a time into each one of the books that come after.
Paladins who wield them in time to lead the charge against Arcadia's aggressors.
Correct.
All right, so we only meet one paladin?
Yeah, Cal is the first paladin.
So is he a good guy? He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
All right, we're trying to get all 7 blades?
Yes.
And what happens when you get all 7 blades?
Hopefully their power will be enough to kind of fight back and lead the armies of Arcadia against their aggressors.
All right, who are their aggressors?
Well, in the first book it just says that it's dragons that have come back from 1,000 years ago.
They just pop up?
Yep.
And what do they want?
Well, originally what they believe is that they want to take over Arcadia. Originally, they ended up annihilating one of the main races. There are 3 main races. You got wizards, humans, and warriors. During the fight 1,000 years ago, the warriors were completely wiped out, and the dragons ended up retreating. But now they've come back, and their only hope is the 7 paladins.
You didn't write a separate language or anything, did you?
No, I did not.
Who are some of the writers that you follow?
I'd like to say I took some, inspiration from J.R.R. Tolkien, but honestly, I haven't even fully read all of the Lord of the Rings books. But I just kind of take inspiration from a lot of TV as well, watching anything Marvel related. I also like to watch the movies of anything by Studio Ghibli, which they're all anime related movies.
Okay.
Yeah, they sort of just, give me some ideas, and then I go off of that, and then from there I write some other things that sort of just comes to mind.
So how are you promoting them?
Right now I just use social media like Instagram and Facebook. I either post pictures of my books and just write a little bit of snippets that try and grab people's attention, I suppose. Definitely want to do some book signings, and I got my at least my first book into my younger brother's high school, so they'll be doing like a book club on it. And
how did you do that?
Honestly, I just asked my brother if he could maybe ask the librarian if they would want my book, and honestly, it was just between my younger brother and the librarian.
And they said yes.
Yeah, she ended up reading it and she liked it, so yeah.
So that's a great start. So they're going to do a book club on it. Are you going to go in and talk about it?
I'm not sure if I'm going to talk about it, but I think they would want me to have like a book signing at the school at one point.
Well, that's the audience you want to reach, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, good luck publishing the rest of these books. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit. Good for you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Finace Bush is a man on a mission, a man of accomplishments, and he shares how he's reached his goals and how you can too in his book, Great Thinking, The Bridge to Successful Living. But first, where'd you get the name Finace?
My father had 15 brothers and 11 sisters.
Oh my gosh.
And He said that when they named him, they were trying to name him what they needed, but they misspelled it by one N.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's a joke. It's a running joke, but actually, as far as he knows, that's, they just kind of threw that name on him, and he's had it since he was a little boy.
Oh my God.
I'm junior, and now there's actually 7 of us. So, yeah, my son is the 3rd, and then on down the line, there's actually 7 Finaces.
That's a good story. You should write a book about that.
I got you.
How long have you been writing?
I started writing at age 21. I started journaling, and I've been a leader since age 14. So around age 21, I started in my devotional period chronicling my day. And it was important for me to pay close attention to things that were happening on a day-to-day basis, because I needed to see whether or not I was progressing in my life or not.
Okay.
I had these plans and objectives that I put in place, and I wanted to accomplish them. And so I started writing. And from there, I wrote my first book entitled Structure, the Master Key to Kingdom Success, because I learned that my life had no structure and I needed disciplines. I did not have any structure in my life. I would start things, but that I wouldn't finish. I had a lot of projects open, and I later discovered as a leader that a lot of people have that same syndrome, or problem, or disease, or whatever you call it. They start, but they don't finish.
Right.
The book is titled Structure, the Master Key to Kingdom Success. It has 13 ingredients to structure. My vision needed transcription. My time needed an assignment. My relationships needed defining. My money needed a mission. My faith needed a definite goal and a chief aim, things like that. So they were 12 primary regiments and disciplines that were necessary to help me accomplish my goals and objectives by structuring my life. It has worked profoundly. I am a totally different person. Yes, ma'am. I'm 63 now. I've been in ministry since I was 14 years old. And I was determined to not live like most religious people who make a lot of promises and endear their hearts to a lot of principles that never fully manifest. So the book houses principles that actually became practical proofs to my life. And yes, ma'am, I have lived them out. My life is evidence.
So how long ago did you write that book?
I wrote Structure in the late 90s.
Okay. And then did you keep writing after that?
Oh, yes. I've probably written about 60-something books since then. I've only fully published 8 of those books.
So the other books are from other publishers, but we can find them.
Yes. Everywhere books can be sold, you can find them.
Okay. So what made you go a more traditional publishing route?
Well, one of the problems of self-publishing is that you have to do all of your own marketing, everything. I stay too busy for that.
Right.
And it's hard to actually put together a team and manage it successfully and do all the other things that my life demands on a daily or weekly basis.
Right. So what is this book about?
The book, Great Thinking, The Bridge to Successful Living, really, in this book, it's a part of a trilogy. It was designed originally to be a part of a trilogy, a 3-part series. So it was initially called Great Thinkers Academy. And that was primarily because I wanted to both educate and demonstrate the power and the privilege of intentional, strategic, and big picture thinking. That is something that I don't see a lot of people engage as a pastor and as a leader.
Okay.
And probably as a parent. So
Yeah.
I have 10 grandkids, and I'm constantly trying to stimulate thinking, motivate them to think. And sometimes one of the things that I learned that people will do if you allow them is live without the assumption of responsibility for themselves because they do not think.
Right.
And so when I stumble across the saying, Thomas Edison said 5% of the people think, 10% of the people think they think, but the other 85 would rather die than think.
Right.
I saw why then he always concluded that thinking is hard work that is why so few people do it.
Exactly. Do you help us learn to think or take the
Yes.
time? It's more about taking the time, isn't it?
It's about taking the time to think. And I think, I wanted to also address one of my noted frustrations as a leader concerning people who live without consideration of the potential that they possess. And, because of their resistance to thinking. And I don't know what your experience has been, but I just noticed that a lot of people neglect thinking. And as a result of that, they become subject to the systemic contrivances, biases, and entrapments of those who do think.
Yes.
The book literally deals with my personal experience as a young man and then as a leader, and all of the different kinds of situations I've been in, where in each case I've been allowed to progress and be productive because I was determined to think for myself.
Can you give me an example?
Yes, definitely. In most of the organizations or affiliations that I've been a part of, if there was an appointment to a board or becoming a board member, they would always ask me. I work for the city mayor, the mayor and the city manager. And as a result of that, they would always, we would start as a board. I would always end up being appointed as the chairman of their boards. And from there, you would hear them make statements like, the reason we appoint him is because he won't settle for just existing as a board member. He's going to demand that we function according to the mandate of our existence, or the reason why we're here, our goals and objectives. And Finace won't tolerate us just being here in face. He's going to demand that we fulfill our obligations or that we just dissolve the board altogether. So I worked in a lot of offices and carried a lot of titles over the span of my life as a leader, apart from being a senior pastor and bishop in ministry for 48 years.
So what makes you a great leader? Are you able to motivate people without offending them?
Yes, I have pretty good people skills. Actually, years ago, I trained with Stephen Covey and about the successful habits of successful people.
Okay.
And I also attended Wilson Learning, Understanding People. Those modules really helped me to grasp what I had a conviction for in gift regarding people, because I love people and I love motivating people to aspire higher or to achieve something from within themselves. It is my belief that most of us have an innate quality, this gift, we call it, from God, an anointing, this unction to function that gives us the ability to literally think through our challenges and overcome them. Nothing happens to us really greater than us, is my philosophy there. If it's happening to you, it's working for you, but you've got to give your mind to it so that you can see how, God will lead you out of it, basically. That's in short.
So you basically cite examples from your own life.
Yes, ma'am.
To inspire readers.
Okay.
Was there ever a situation you were in that seemed insurmountable?
Yes. In 95, 96, I was diagnosed with cancer. And the same principle that I taught in the structure book is the same principle that I live by. And I would literally go up into my study room and pray and meditate. I will use the Joshua 1:8 principle. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate therein day and night until you observe yourself doing and being according to all that's written therein. Then shall you make your own way prosperous and you shall have good success. So I would literally go and shut down everything and stay there and literally rehearse the promises of God pertaining to the area that I needed to overcome in. And as a result of that, one night I was there. I was in prayer, in meditation, and a real spirit of peace came into my room. And it was as if I heard a voice that said, you're healed. Well, the next day I was led to go back to the doctor. the same doctors that diagnosed me. And from that diagnosis, they checked me and said, we don't know what you've done, but whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because not only do we not only see any sign of cancer any longer, but now it looks like your cells are rejuvenating. Well, my father died from pancreatic cancer. He was diagnosed with 4th stage, and he lived about 6 months. I've been checked ever since 96. I've been checked probably twice a year up until the last year. At age 40, they told me that the average male, his spine begins to develop a curvature. But between age 40 and 41, I gained a little over a half inch in height. And they told me it looked like my cells were still rejuvenating. And today, I'm telling you, twice a year, it's been affirmed that I have no trace of cancer. And it looks like I'm still getting healthier than I was as a young man.
What kind of cancer did you have?
I had a severe skin cancer.
Oh, like melanoma type of?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing stuff you got going on there.
Yeah, it's been a joy. Well, I use the same principle for my finances. I use the same principle for my relationship. My wife said I was too dedicated as a pastor in our youth, and she left me, right? So I went to God and I said, Lord, I'm trying to do what you called me to do. And, I don't understand why this could happen to me. So he just taught me how to be a true husbandman using the same principle. Won my family back. They came back home. We wrote a book entitled Created to Love, but Don't Know How. And so she and I actually authored it together. And we talk about the principles that I walked through to get her attention, and that the measures God used to bring her back to me and my family. So we've been together now 43 years in marriage.
That's amazing. Well, if you aren't a shining example of the power of faith, I don't know what is, because you have unwavering faith.
Unwavering faith. I live by faith. Yes, ma'am. That's the majority of my messages. They come from the reality of faith. I told God when he called me to minister that if I taught faith and it didn't work for me, I would not teach anybody else. And so it's just living according to the principles, obeying it, and the promises do manifest. They are real. The promises of God are yes and amen, just like the word says.
Well, and also believing that we're all here for a purpose, and there's something for each and every one of us to do. There's no reason to be envious or jealous. We all have something special about us, and the hard part is tapping into that and believing that that's what you're here for, and that's where you need to go. It's hard,
and that's what the book talks about. I have a chapter there in the book that talks about the power to succeed is in you, and it deals with fulfilling your purpose. Learning how to listen to the Spirit of God in your inner man. A lot of times what we lose is the essence of how God speaks to us because of the traditional measures that we've heard the gospel preached. And so we don't listen to that voice in our inner conscience and sometimes in our spirit man, wherein God is literally trying to line us up with something more purposeful that will give us the ability to overcome, but we do not give him our mind. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. He tries to prompt through our spirit into our hearts so that our imaginary chambers are filled with what he's showing us so that we can gain concept. And from that, we're able to be more purposeful. It's the way everything is created.
Wow, what a great message. People must know about your book, and you talk about your book,
yes.
Right?
Yes, ma'am. We're getting it out. Yes, ma'am. We've been trying to make sure that we were doing things according to whatever Page Publishing suggested. So we've been kind of soft with it now. We're kind of getting a little bit more aggressive.
Okay.
And we're learning that a great deal of people are responding to the message. There's preachers and politicians and professionals of all sorts that's coming in for interviews and television programs. Different people are asking me to interview me so that we can literally talk about the book and learn how to use it. I've got pastors that's actually using it to teach their congregations for Bible study.
That should tell you everything you need to know. I think you're on the right track here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're a great inspiration.
Thank you, Alice. All right. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.